Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
You can tell a lot about a company by where it invests. At ConocoPhillips, we're investing in Arctic science and engineering at the University of Alaska Anchorage. And we're supporting today's students and tomorrow's engineers at UAF. In fact, today, more than 100 of our employees are University of Alaska graduates, and our future is in their hands. We happen to think that's a pretty good investment. ConocoPhillips, Alaska's oil and gas company.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on this 29th of January. As always, you can visit our website for the very latest weather information, no matter where you are in Alaska, at arh.noaa.gov or weather.gov/Alaska. We'll get you to the same place now. Weather info line is open at 800-472-0391. Find each Weather Service office in Alaska on Twitter, on Facebook as U.S. National Weather Service Alaska, and on YouTube in the afternoon for your daily afternoon map briefing there. And of course, after the show, you can find the entire broadcast of what you're watching right now on alaskapublic.org or on YouTube by searching AKWX TV. Tonight's hazardous weather situation shows that we'll have some dense fog across parts of the Copper River Basin, some of that going down below a quarter mile along the road system there. That will go until about noon tomorrow. We still have a flash flood watch up for our friends around Valdez and Keystone Canyon avalanche. Of course, still creating that dam along the low river, so we're continuing to monitor that situation. Things are pretty quiet in southeast and most of south central at this time. Looking a little bit farther north and west, though, freezing rain advisory out around St. Lawrence Island. Expecting very light amounts of ice, but any amount of ice after a while could add a little bit more weight to things like power lines. So again, you might expect a little bit of slick travel there if you're walking to and from, but hopefully not a whole lot more than just a tenth of an inch or so. Freezing rain advisory will continue through the evening and overnight hours. More all-time January records were set in Alaska. This was from Monday, the 27th in Kotzebue, as you well know if you are in Kotzebue. Temperatures there were awfully warm. 40 degrees was the high. The previous record on Monday for you was 39 degrees. This is now the highest temperature observed in January ever since records were kept since 1929. In Nome, also Monday, pretty warm day there. The highest temperature observed in January since 1906, since reliable records were kept at that point. So pretty warm stuff. It looks like the amount of heat that we've been talking about is slowly subsiding somewhat. It's not that we're seeing a whole lot of colder air really return to the region just yet, as much as it is just not so warm. We don't have such a huge intrusion of warmth, but it's not, again, the cold really taking back over Alaska just yet. Pretty hard to keep it that warm, though, considering the amount of sunlight we're not getting at this time of the year. So things are still kind of in warm mode, but maybe not as warm as they have been for the last couple of weeks. Looking out west, you can see a number of disturbances. Two of those lined up along the Aleutians. The next one, working into the western Aleutians, will bring in some storm force winds starting probably Thursday night and into Friday. So we're going to keep a watch on this. A lot of these storms, though, even though they seem to be lining up, are really losing a lot of their punch as they work into the western part of Alaska. You can see the overall view here. High pressure really in charge of most of Alaska at this point, keeping things pretty quiet in southeast. Sure, there's going to be some areas of fog as we're seeing around the Copper River Basin, likely around North Way and Eagle, and around the periphery of that high pressure system. Up across the Arctic coast, a little bit of a stronger wind flow there across the Beaufort Sea at this point. Most of the precipitation is really going to be limited to the western periphery of high pressure that's sitting across south central and the interior right now. That's brought us some beautiful skies across south central earlier today. Kept most of the clouds out to the west, and again, we'll keep these approaching storm systems really from just sliding right into south central or southeast Alaska or even the interior at this point. So a lot of dry days coming our way without really a huge return to a cold or wet or maybe necessarily stormy weather. Here's a look at the weather pattern right now. We've got a frontal boundary out across the Yukon and the North Slope that's keeping the coldest high pressure out across the parts of western Canada and away from Alaska. Relatively quiet weather across the interior and southeast. High pressure a little bit farther south of the Gulf. Here's our first wave now on the weather map. This low pressure system working its way east of the Aleutians, bringing some light rain out toward Kodiak and the Alaska Peninsula around Dutch Harbor as well. Looks like a little bit further out west, the next system there has already dropped to 978 millibars. By tonight, it'll bring some light snow showers out across parts of St. Lawrence Island. Some of that, again, could fall as freezing rain, though in relatively light amounts. Low pressure working its way up the southern tip of the Alaska Peninsula will spread a chance for some rain, mainly along coastal areas of south central to Kodiak Island. Out toward the Shumagan Islands, and then we'll get a little bit of a break of high pressure here across the central parts of the chain, and the next wave sets up again across the western sections there with more of a south and westerly flow. Quiet weather in the interior. Again, we're going to have some areas of dense fog there, including parts of the Copper River Basin. Most of southeast will remain pretty dry there. Could see a very light wind setting up as we head into Thursday and for Friday. High pressure sitting across the Gulf should keep a relatively clear sky there across eastern parts of the Gulf. Nice and sunny there across the interior and south central tomorrow. Some passing fair weather clouds should be about it. And low pressure working its way across the central Bering Sea and the Aleutians will kick up a few more showers. A little bit of a snow chance there on the back side of that system. But most of that, again, really sparse as far as moisture goes compared to where we've been. As we get into Friday, you can see the next wave. They're really cranking up the stronger southwesterly fetch. And with that, we expect storm force winds across the western parts of the chain. Already, we're seeing this leading edge of low pressure working up into the west coast of Alaska, losing a lot of its punch. So watch for that frontal boundary to fall apart. It may spread some light snow showers or rain mixed with snow across the west coast, especially mixing in a little bit more with rain the farther south you go into the YK. And high pressure across the interior, breaking apart a lot of the cloud cover, but we might start to see a few more of those clouds work their way up from Kodiak, Shelikof Strait, and south central Kenai, probably getting very close to that sunshine and cloud edge. Here's a look at temperatures today. 30s and 40s for southeast, a fairly cool day compared to, again, the last 2 weeks or so. However, things are still somewhat mild across a large part of the southern parts of our state. 30s and 40s for south central, 41 there around Whittier, 42 in Kodiak, 25 in Talkeetna, 15 in Fairbanks today, 37 around Healy. Greeley was 22, Northway and Eagle looking at single-digit temps today. 0 in Fort Yukon, 6 below in Arctic Village. The Arctic coast was looking at temperatures, though, that were above 0 once again for the most part. 3 in Barrow. And you'll notice areas around Kotzebue Sound in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. 23 in Shishmaref, 32 in Nome. Around Grayling, temps there held close to 30 degrees this afternoon. 16 in McGrath. Bethel was showing 41 with Nunivak Island at 34. About the same there around Savunga and Gamble. And areas around Bristol Bay saw temps in the upper 30s to upper 40s. Most of the Alaska Peninsula, including Sand Point, in the low to mid 40s today. Dutch Harbor, Unalaska at 40 degrees. The Pribilofs in the lower 30s today with snow and fog, and mid 30s there for the central parts of the chain. Overnight low temperatures likely in the single digits to well below 0 around Fort Yukon and even Fairbanks down to 4 below. Look for teens and 20s for south central, 20s and 30s for southeast. Kodiak 36 degrees, mid 30s for the Aleutians. The west coast in the 20s and 30s. Nome 24 and only 4 for Barrow overnight with a high temperature there for you at 12 tomorrow. Looks like most areas in the single digits and teens around the interior and the Tanana Valley tomorrow with high temperatures around Denali National Park closing in on 24. South Central, low to mid 30s for you, 41 in Kodiak, 30s, and mostly low 40s there for southeast Sitka, about 42 degrees. Upper 30s and lower 40s for the most of the chain. Bethel's looking at 38, Nome about 30 degrees, and again the Arctic coast likely in the low to mid teens, still holding on to milder weather. Flying weather shows a wide swath of MVFR conditions across the Gulf and the North Pacific, with IFR conditions leading up to the Alaska Peninsula and parts of the western Kodiak Island coast. Most of the Seward Peninsula will be under MVFR conditions, but it looks like the Pribilofs may catch a little bit of a break, with IFR developing again ahead of the next wave there in the central Aleutians. Your pass conditions show that Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass, though, should be VFR conditions through your Thursday, with Lake Clark and Merrill Pass seeing improvements throughout the day. And with high pressure in charge, Rainy Pass and Windy Pass should both be VFR. Isabel Pass should be visual flight rule as we go. Mentasta Pass looks to be pretty good. Tanita Pass should be just fine. And Portage Pass will see improving visibility as we go through your Thursday afternoon. And Chilkoot and White Pass right now also look to be VFR. Freezing levels show a pocket of warm air up across the Beaufort Seacoast, with freezing levels as high as 4,000 feet there north of Kaktovik. Pretty impressive warmth that's still holding on, but you can see overall the pattern is kind of retreating a little bit. So again, not really a cold pattern, but just not as warm as what we were talking about. Across the central Aleutians, a 2,000-foot freezing line there, and the surface freezing line itself is still well to the north out in the west. Icing potential below 10,000 feet and above 7,000 feet as you approach Kodiak from the south, above 5,000 feet to about 8,000 feet across the YK coastline up into the Norton Sound region, but that's about it. The moisture just isn't there right now. The jet stream potential shows high pressure ridging across a large part of mainland Alaska. We've got a weak wave of low pressure here across the Pacific Northwest, but the real action is south of Alaska with the main flow right across the North Pacific, anywhere from 80 to 90, maybe 100 knots in some cases, and then a dividing line from the really cold and the milder weather, the really cold being shunted off into the Canadian provinces and, of course, the Midwest and East Coast. 9,000 feet, you can see our weak ridge here, allowing just a little bit of a north flow to descend from north to south into south central Alaska. A little bit of a stronger southerly flow across the west coast, heading up to Nome and Norton Sound and the northwestern coast, and lighter northerly flow coming down into southeast. That's keeping things cool there and keeping most of the active weather out across the west coast and the Bering. At 3,000 feet, wind speeds still aren't terribly strong. The fastest area is just to the west of the Bering Strait, around 50 knots or so, and light northerlies coming through the interior. A little bit of a faster zip-along flow there at 20 to 30 knots coming into Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay. And again, most of southeast looking at fair winds from the north and west, about 20 to maybe 30 knots at tops. Here's a look at turbulence then. You'll see a faster river of moving air across the northern parts of the Yukon and the Northwest Territories. That'll be below about 8,000 feet. But if you're staying in Alaska, chances are areas around the Bristol Bay region, maybe below 6,000 feet, you could run into some moderate chop. And isolated turbulence, probably light from St. Matthew all the way down toward Unalaska and Dutch Harbor. And that should just about do it. That's a look at your aviation forecast. We'll be back with marine weather here in just a few minutes.
ISMA, the International Snowmobile Manufacturers Association, whose members are Artco, Bombardier, Polaris, and Yamaha, is proud to present Safe Riders. You make snowmobiling safe. To truly enjoy snowmobiling, it's important to take your time and get used to the machine and how it reacts on the snow. There are a few key things that will provide you better control and assist you in mastering driving techniques. There are 4 common riding positions: sitting, kneeling, standing, and posting. Each is designed to work best for specific situations. Sitting is the most common riding position. With your feet flat on the running boards and the footwells, they can work like shocks to absorb the bumps. Sitting keeps your weight low and easy to shift. This is the recommended position for carrying passengers if your snowmobile is designed for carrying a passenger. The kneeling position is best for side hilling and steep grades. The increased height helps at road crossings. It does take some getting used to, so practice it at a slow speed. Standing is used when greater visibility is required. It's used at road crossings. Posting is a semi-sitting position that allows the legs to work as shock absorbers in rough and washboard terrain. Regardless of which position you choose to ride, never stick your feet out to assist with turning or stopping. Shifting your weight on a snowmobile provides you better control while negotiating corners and hills. By leaning into a turn, this transfers your body weight to the inside of the machine, providing better traction for a more controlled turn. When side hilling, assume the kneeling position and lean into the hill to place pressure on the uphill side of the track. If the snowmobile has been designed and built for a passenger, and you're going to carry a passenger, be sure to explain to them that he or she should lean with you on corners and hills. As well, inform the passengers to always hold on to either the passenger hand grips or seat strap, and to never let his or her feet come off the running boards. As a general rule of operation, always ride with a buddy that has their own separate machine. As you ride more, you will encounter many different types of terrain and be required to perform maneuvers that call for specific know-how. Here's an overview of how to handle some of the most common. Hill riding requires proper leaning and throttle control to be handled successfully. When going up a hill, lean forward on the machine and provide enough throttle to get you to the top. Stay to the right and never stop on the hill. If you stop while going uphill, you may find you dig in and get stuck. When riding downhill, loss of control is the hazard awaiting the inexperienced. While in the sitting position, pump the brake off and on to establish a safe, controlled speed of descent. Be careful not to lock up your track and go into a skid. Keep the clutch engaged while on the downhill to prevent the track from freewheeling and losing control. There is a rhythm of brake and gas that needs to be established. If you're at the top of a hill with other snowmobiles coming up, it's a good idea to allow them to pass you before you attempt to go down. Road crossings are common when riding. At these intersections, you must come to a complete stop. Always make sure there are no vehicles coming from any direction before crossing. When clear, cross at a 90-degree angle, the shortest path across. In group riding, the leader will cross first and then direct the remaining riders as to when they can cross safely. Oftentimes, large snowbanks line both sides of the roadway, forcing snowmobilers to come down off one only to climb up another on the other side of the road. To come off the bank, post and lean into the top of the bank as you descend. Never attempt this if a vehicle is approaching. To climb the snowbank, post, lean into the bank, and apply only enough throttle to climb the bank. Remember, skis and tracks do not respond to pavement as they do on snow. Your steering is very limited, so always cross at a 90-degree angle. The rules surrounding riding on roadways are different everywhere you go, so check locally for details. Where riding on roadways is permitted, the same laws apply to a snowmobile as they apply to a car. No drinking and driving, no speeding, and adhere to the local signage. Remember, you must obey school bus lights and give the proper right-of-way. When approaching a railway crossing, a safe rider stops completely and checks both ways to ensure no train is coming. Never trust signal lights. Always check for yourself. When it comes to riding frozen lakes and rivers, you must use the utmost care. Traveling on ice can be dangerous. Ride with a buddy and know before you go. Always check with local clubs or authorities for the ice conditions. The very nature of ice is foreign to good control of a snowmobile. Steering is minimal, and uncontrolled spins are an ever-present danger. Beware of ice pressure ridges, thin ice, and open water. If you fall through the ice, the proper way to get out is to elevate yourself at the ice edge and get your stomach out first. Then, pull yourself forward or roll away from the hole until it is safe to stand. If you ride on ice, you may want to consider carrying a tool to assist in pulling yourself out and away from the hole. Drowning is a leading cause of snowmobile fatalities, so if you don't know, don't go. Also, the presence of previous tracks does not ensure a safe route across ice. The mountains are known for the incredibly deep powder they can provide snowmobilers. This calls for a different style of riding and some additional knowledge on the rider's part. Avalanches can occur, so it's wise to check in with local authorities. When snowmobiling in mountainous regions, always carry equipment such as probes, shovels, and locators. When riding at night, the first thing you want to do is slow down. A safe rider knows his visibility is limited by the beam of his snowmobile's headlight. Excessive speed for conditions will leave insufficient reaction time to negotiate corners and other surprises you may be faced with. All lights must be in excellent working order and should be checked while riding to remove any snow buildup. If you ride at night, ride with another snowmobiler. Carry a flashlight and flare. The idea is see and be seen. If you stop at night, always pull off the trail. At some point in your riding career, you will get stuck. This is something that can be easily handled if you're prepared. A safe rider will have a buddy to assist in getting the sled out of trouble. First, you lift the back end onto new ground to allow the track better traction. Clear away any excess snow from under the front. Next, apply power to get out and slowly accelerate. It may take a couple of tries, but it works great. Remember, ride with another snowmobile. If your problems are more serious, he or she can always help pull you out using a rope or go for help. Riding with passengers brings additional responsibilities. Both riders need to be sure the snowmobile is designed for two riders. You should be aware of the need to hold on securely at all times, keep their feet on the running boards. They should also know how to lean properly while riding. Drivers should always be in control and never attempt anything risky. All riders should be dressed and protected appropriately. A safe rider can make snowmobiling safe for the entire family. Zero tolerance means no alcohol while driving. Without a doubt, snowmobiling is a great social opportunity. But equally as firm are the statistics that reveal alcohol is the #1 contributing factor in snowmobile accidents and fatalities. More and more, the sport is becoming a family recreational pastime. It's not a place for people who are not in control. Distorted perception means you may not see what is ahead. Impaired coordination and a slower reaction time means you may not be able to avoid what's coming ahead. And losing one's natural sense of caution will put you and others in a situation you may not live to tell about. Zero tolerance is the only right way to ensure your mind stays sharp and you stay in control of your machine. The partners in ISMA hope that you will find this video helpful. Some points you will use immediately and every day. Others you may not encounter for a while. Rest assured that as you keep riding, this great sport will keep you out on the trails, lure you to other destinations where new and exciting experiences exist. Your knowledge will provide you confidence, which will make your snowmobiling that much more enjoyable. Gliding down groomed trails, experiencing winter's incredible beauty, and riding responsibly, confidence that you know what you're doing is what makes snowmobiling such a great pastime. The pleasure we experience is individual, as are the responsibilities. Remember, safe riders, you make snowmobiling safe. Remember to join a club or association to make new friends and keep on top of all the fun activities that are going on. For information in Canada, contact the Canadian Council of Snowmobile Organizations, 106 Saunders Road, Unit 12, Barrie, Ontario, L4M 6E7, area code 705-725-1121. For information in the United States, contact the American Council of Snowmobile Associations at 271 Woodland Pass, Suite 216, East Lansing, Michigan, 48823, area code 517-351-4362. The members of ISMA, Artco, Bombardier, Polaris, and Yamaha hope you've enjoyed this video presentation and enjoy snowmobiling. Remember, safe riders, you make snowmobiling safe.
Well, we sure hope we can rebuild some of the snowpack across a large part of Alaska before winter is through. Here's a look at southeast now. For the marine areas, a northwesterly flow running down the coast will be pretty light, 15 to maybe 20 knots as you get down toward the southern entrances. Seas running around 6 to 8 feet on the outside. On the inside, small seas around 3 feet or so with a north and northeasterly flow across the northern half, around 15 knots. More of a northwesterly flow across some of the inner channels there across the south. As you get into Friday, notice a little bit of a shift across the northern coastal areas around Yakutat, a 15-knot wind at 7-foot seas. Northeasterly flow still continues across the north and northwesterlies as you head a little bit further south toward the Clarence and Chatham Strait. North flow just outside of Craig and Klawock there, heading toward the Dixon entrance, remains light, 15 knots with a 6-foot sea. South Central also looking at pretty light winds. Remember, high pressure's in charge right now, so the winds may be variable, they might be light, but in any case, nothing really strong right now across South Central. Inside Prince William Sound, a northwesterly flow, 10 knots with a 2-foot sea, 7-foot seas on the outside, a 9-foot sea coming into Kodiak on a southeasterly flow at 15 knots. Inside Chillicothe Strait, that's an easterly wind at 15 knots with a 3-foot sea. Cook Inlet right now only looking at 10-knot winds and variable flow, if maybe a little bit more to the north and east, a little farther south you go. 2 to 3-foot seas there as we get into Friday. A variable flow all the way from the northern part of Cook Inlet all the way through Chillicothe Strait. And we're developing more of a west and southwesterly flow south of Seward, anywhere from 15 to 20 knots. Variable flow inside Prince William Sound with a 2-foot sea. Looking at Alaska Peninsula, more of a southeasterly flow from areas south and west of Kodiak Island coming across the peninsula between 25 and 30 knots. 7 to 8-foot seas on the Bering Sea side. On the Pacific side, that's 12 to 15-foot seas. By Friday, you can see more of a stronger south and westerly flow developing, 20 to 25 knots. Nothing too terribly strong just yet, but you can see the shift taking place. 3 to 7-foot seas on the Bering side, 8 to 9-foot seas on the Pacific side. For the Aleutians, we'll wait until Friday for the stronger winds to develop out west, but as that develops, 20 to 30-knot winds start up from Kiska out towards Shemya, and a southerly flow around Adak and Atka. Winds still coming in from the west from Unalaska and Nikolsky, 30 to 35 knots on either side of the chain, 13 to 16-foot seas on the Pacific side. As we get into Friday, there's the storm force winds we were talking about. 23-foot seas develop there with a 16-foot sea from Kiska out toward Adak. A westerly flow strengthens a little bit from 20 to 25 knots from Adak out to Nikolsky, and 15 to 17-foot seas on the Pacific side with 8 to 9-foot seas on the Bering Sea side for Friday. For the west coast, a south and easterly flow pretty much running right over the YK Delta and Nunivak Island up towards St. Lawrence Island between 15 to 30 knots. In the ice-free areas, again, you're looking at 4 to 8 foot seas. The Pribilofs, though, a stronger northwesterly flow at 20 knots with a 9-foot sea expected there. That becomes westerly by Friday at 25 knots with a 9-foot sea. And southerlies are picking up a little bit more. From Nunivak Island out toward the St. Matthew Island waters, you should expect 6 to 9-foot seas for the end of the week. Across the north slope, I'll look for more of a southeasterly flow, 15 to 20 knots into Kotzebue Sound and up toward Point Lay. Westerlies from Barrow eastward toward Kaktovik, 10 to 15 knots. And by Friday, that switches up a little bit, more of a south and easterly flow, making it to Barrow. Easterlies north of Prudhoe Bay and Deadhorse, and northwesterlies there for Kaktovik at 15 knots with 25 knots inside Kotzebue Sound. Recapping your weather for tonight, dense fog is possible around the Copper River Basin. For the road system there, visibilities could drop to about a quarter mile or less, so use caution there if you're driving through that region tonight. Looking out to the west at St. Lawrence Island, areas of freezing rain are possible there. You might also see a little bit of light snow. The freezing rain amount should be pretty light, maybe about 1/10 of an inch or so, but a little bit around that area is when you start to see some impacts to power lines. So keep an eye on things there and watch your step as you travel around Savunga and Gamble tonight. Low pressure around the Sand Point area, looking to slowly drift eastward and north. High pressure, though, chewing up the leading edge of these weather systems as they cross the Bering Sea. You can see one of those frontal boundaries falls apart tomorrow. Another one races in to try and take its place. Neither one of these systems have a lot of moisture to work with, so we don't see a whole lot of impacts for the interior or the west coast, just a scattering of showers. Some may be rain, some rain mixed with snow, and some all rain the further south you go. Southeast is pretty dry, though a little bit cooler than in recent weeks. And most of the interior should be relatively dry as well. A lot of looks at the sun during the afternoon hours with temperatures not as warm as they have been, but certainly not cold or perhaps average levels just yet. A look at Friday shows a strengthening storm out in the west with those storm force winds we just saw approaching the western parts of the chain, and a quiet weather week across the Arctic slope. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.